1 hour English Shadowing Master Listening and Speaking Practice, B1, B2. How I Trained My Brain to Think in English in 6 Months. Full Guide. The moment everything changed. I did not plan to change my life. I did not wake up one morning and suddenly decide to train my brain to think in English. It happened slowly. It happened quietly. It happened on a normal day, at a normal time, when I felt tired, frustrated, and stuck. For many years, English was my mountain. A high mountain. A cold mountain. A mountain I tried to climb again and again, but always slipped back down. I studied grammar rules. I memorized long lists of vocabulary. I watched videos. I read books. I took notes. I repeated lessons again and again. But even after all that effort, I still could not speak naturally. I still translated every sentence in my head. I still felt slow. I still felt blocked. Every conversation felt like walking through thick mud. Every sentence felt heavy. Every word felt like a stone I had to lift with 2 hands. Inside me, something was wrong. I knew it. I could feel it. My brain was not thinking in English, it was reacting in English. There is a big difference. When you react in English, you translate. When you react in English, you hesitate. When you react in English, you freeze. But when you think in English, the world opens. You speak without fear. You speak with flow. You speak with confidence. The words come to you like water. You become free. One evening, after a long and exhausting day, I sat in my room and asked myself one question. A simple question. A powerful question. A question that changed everything. What if I changed the way I learn? What if I train my brain differently? What if my problem is not vocabulary? What if my problem is not grammar? What if my problem is my brain habits? This idea shocked me. It woke me up. It felt like opening a door to a new place, a place I had never explored before. I realized something huge. Something that would guide me for the next 6 months. Something that would transform the way I learn forever. English was not a subject. English was not an exam. English was not a school lesson. English was a brain skill, a mental habit, a pattern of thinking, a rhythm, a way of experiencing the world. If English was a brain skill, I needed to train my brain, not my memory, not my test results, not my grammar points, my brain. This changed everything. I stood up from my chair. I walked across the room. I looked at myself in the mirror. I looked directly into my own eyes. I felt nervous. I felt excited. I felt something powerful rising inside me. 6 months, I said out loud. Give yourself 6 months. 6 months of focus. 6 months of consistency. 6 months of training your brain every day. 6 months of forcing your thoughts to switch languages. 6 months of planting English inside your mind. It felt like a promise. It felt like a commitment. It felt like a new beginning. I did not know exactly what would happen. I did not know how fast I would improve. I did not know how hard the journey would be. But I knew one thing. I could not continue the old way. The old way had brought me stress, not fluency. The old way had brought me knowledge, but not confidence.
The old way had brought me information, but not transformation. I needed a new method, a method based on the brain, a method that rewired my thinking, a method that created English paths inside my mind, a method that made English automatic. I decided to analyze myself. I needed to understand my brain habits. I needed to understand what was stopping me. I needed to understand the invisible walls inside my mind. The first wall was fear. Fear of mistakes. Fear of judgment. Fear of speaking slowly. Fear of sounding wrong. Fear is a silent enemy. It grows inside you without permission. It controls your voice. It locks your ideas. It makes your words shake. It makes your tongue heavy. It makes your brain freeze. I wrote in my notebook, "Remove fear from the learning process." The second wall was translation. Translation is a trap. Translation destroys speed. Translation breaks your rhythm. Translation blocks your thoughts. Translation creates distance between you and the language. I wrote in my notebook, "Stop translating, think directly in English." The third wall was passive learning. For years, I consumed English, but I did not use it. I was a listener, not a speaker. I was a watcher, not a thinker. I was a reader, not a creator. Passive learning feels safe. Passive learning feels productive. Passive learning feels easy. But passive learning does not build fluency. I wrote in my notebook, "Active English every day." After writing these three things, I felt clear. I felt brave. I felt ready. The next step was designing a plan. A simple plan. A powerful plan. A plan that would become my daily routine for 6 months. I asked myself another question. What is the fastest way to train the brain to think in a new language? I searched. I studied. I tested ideas. I experimented. I observed my reactions. I paid attention to how my mind behaved. And slowly, I discovered something important. You cannot force your brain to think in English by reading grammar books. You cannot force your brain to think in English by memorizing vocabulary. You cannot force your brain to think in English by studying once a week. Your brain learns by repetition. Your brain learns by constant exposure. Your brain learns by connection. Your brain learns by using the language in real contexts. Your brain learns through habits. To think in English, I had to create an English environment inside my head. I had to build a world where English was normal. I had to live with English every day. But how? I remembered something I had learned about the brain many years ago. The brain does not change with pressure. The brain changes with patterns. You need patterns. You need consistency. You need routines that repeat again and again. This became my mission, to design routines that trained my brain to think in English every single day. Not routines that felt heavy or boring, not routines that felt like school, routines that felt natural, routines that made English a daily part of my life, routines that created new thinking pathways inside my brain. I experimented with different methods. I tried speaking to myself in English. I tried shadowing English audio. I tried describing everything I saw. I tried journaling in English. I tried asking myself questions in English. I tried answering them in English. I tried imagining conversations. I tried reading out loud. I tried switching my inner voice. Slowly, a method began to form. A method that worked for my brain. A method that made English natural. A method that helped me think, not translate. A method that helped me speak, not hesitate. I felt something changing, something quiet, something deep, something strong. At first, it was small. A few English thoughts in the morning, a few English reactions during the day, a few English phrases that appeared automatically. But small changes grow. Small changes multiply. Small changes become big changes when you repeat them every day. I had started the journey. I was training my brain, and I could already feel the first signs of transformation. The next 6 months would not be easy, but they would be worth it. They would shape my future. They would change my identity. They would give me a new voice. And this is where the real story begins.
Part 2. Building the daily system that transformed my brain. When I began my 6-month journey, I knew one thing clearly. If I wanted my brain to think in English, I needed a system. Not motivation, not luck, not random study sessions. A system I followed every day. A system that worked even when I felt tired. A system that was simple, repeatable, and powerful. I sat at my desk with a blank sheet of paper. I looked at it for a long time. I asked myself, what does my brain need to change its habits? The answer came slowly. It came piece by piece. It came with honesty. My brain needed constant contact with English. My brain needed active use. My brain needed structure. My brain needed small steps every day. My brain needed repetition. My brain needed a clear routine to follow. So I built one. I created a daily system of 4 parts. Each part had a different purpose. Each part trained a different part of my brain. Each part pushed me to think in English, not translate. The 4 parts were morning input, midday activation, evening output, and night reflection. These 4 parts became my rhythm. They became the heartbeat of my learning. They created new English pathways inside my mind. Let me explain how each part worked. Morning input. Morning input was the beginning of my English day. It was the moment I opened my mind to English. It was a gentle introduction, not a heavy study session. The goal was simple. Wake up my brain in English. I started with listening, not reading, not writing, listening. Listening is powerful because it teaches your brain the sound of the language. It teaches rhythm. It teaches natural patterns. It teaches real English, not school English. Every morning, I chose one audio. Sometimes it was a podcast. Sometimes it was a YouTube video. Sometimes it was a story. Sometimes it was an interview. The type did not matter. The consistency did. I listened for 20 to 30 minutes. I listened with focus. I listened with curiosity. I listened with an open mind. I did not try to understand every detail.
I did not pause. I did not rewind. I did not take notes. My only goal was to let English flow into my brain, to allow the sounds to enter, to allow the ideas to move, to allow the language to become familiar. At first, it felt difficult. My brain resisted. My thoughts drifted. I felt slow. I felt confused. But after a few weeks, something changed. My brain started accepting English faster. The sounds felt softer. The flow felt smoother. My mind did not fight anymore. Morning input became my ritual. A calm ritual. A quiet ritual. A powerful ritual that prepared my brain for the rest of the day.
Midday activation. Morning input brought English into my mind. Midday activation pushed me to use it. This was the active part of the system. This was the moment I trained my brain to think in English, not translate. The main technique I used was shadowing. Shadowing became my secret weapon. Shadowing changed my speaking speed. Shadowing changed my confidence. Shadowing changed the relationship between my brain and my mouth. Shadowing is simple. You listen to English audio, you speak at the same time, you follow the speaker's rhythm, you copy their tone, you repeat their phrases, you let the words flow through you. At first it was hard, very hard. My mouth could not keep up. My voice stumbled. My pronunciation felt messy. My brain panicked. I felt lost many times. But shadowing is not about perfection. Shadowing is about connection. Shadowing is about training. Shadowing is about flow. Shadowing is about trusting your brain. Shadowing is about letting go. I began with slow audio, very slow. I shadowed simple conversations. I shadowed short dialogues. I shadowed beginner stories. I shadowed anything that felt manageable. Slowly, day by day, my mouth became faster. My tongue became flexible. My breathing became smoother. My brain began to think ahead. My reactions became quicker. Shadowing taught me something important. When you speak with speed, your brain cannot translate. It is impossible. The brain must switch languages. It must think directly in English. It must move forward without hesitation. That is why shadowing is so powerful. It forces your brain to think in English automatically. It cuts the connection to your native language. It builds a new language circuit in your mind. I practice shadowing every day for 15 to 20 minutes. Not 1 hour, not 2 hours. Just a short, focused, powerful session. And every day I felt improvement. Tiny improvements, invisible improvements. Improvements inside my mind that I could feel but could not describe. Midday activation became the engine of my system. It was the part that produced real transformation. It was the part that pushed my limits. It was the part that made English a living skill. Evening output. Evening output was the third part of the system. This part was about creation. This part was about expression. This part was about producing English from my own mind. Morning input gave me listening. Midday activation gave me speaking rhythm. Evening output helped me build real thoughts in English.
I needed this part. I needed it deeply. Because thinking in English requires producing your own ideas, your own sentences, your own voice, your own perspective. The tool I used was simple, journaling, but not long journaling, not perfect journaling, not artistic journaling. I wrote short sentences about my day. I wrote simple thoughts. I wrote what I saw. I wrote what I felt. I wrote what I learned. I wrote what confused me. I wrote what excited me. Every evening, I opened my notebook. I wrote for 10 minutes. Just 10. No pressure, no rules, no corrections. The goal was flow. Not accuracy, not grammar, not perfection. Flow. When you write daily in English, something amazing happens. Your inner voice begins to switch languages. Your thoughts begin to form in English automatically. Your ideas stop passing through translation. You begin to think in English directly without realizing it. Evening output was not loud. It was not dramatic. It was not exciting. But it was powerful. It was the quiet force that changed my thinking. It was the silent practice that built my English brain. Night reflection. The last part of the system was night reflection. This part seems small, but it was one of the most important. It trained my brain to stay connected to English before sleeping. It strengthened everything I learned during the day. Before going to sleep, I reviewed my mental process. I asked myself simple questions. Questions that made my brain work in English. What new words did I hear today? What ideas did I understand? What did I shadow well today? What felt difficult? What felt easy? What can I try tomorrow? These questions were not complicated, but answering them in English created a powerful effect. It made my brain think in English right before rest. And the brain loves to process information during sleep. It organizes. It connects. It strengthens memory. It builds new pathways. Night reflection helped my brain store English deeply. It helped me remember patterns. It helped me keep the language alive, even while sleeping. This four-part system became my daily cycle. I followed it every day, not perfectly, but consistently. Morning input, midday activation, evening output, night reflection. This rhythm shaped my days. It shaped my habits. It shaped my identity. It shaped my mind. And after a few weeks, something new began to happen. Something subtle. Something beautiful. Something surprising. I started thinking in English without trying. Just a little, just sometimes, but it was happening. The first time, I noticed it while washing dishes. I looked at a cup and thought, I should rinse this again. The sentence appeared in English, not in my native language. English. My heart jumped. I felt a shock. I smiled. I felt proud. I felt hopeful. A few days later, it happened again. I was walking outside. I felt the wind. And suddenly I thought, it's colder today. Again, in English. Not forced, not practiced, natural. Then it happened during conversations with myself, during simple situations, during small decisions. My brain was changing. My brain was learning. My brain was switching languages. The system was working. The next step was to push deeper, to strengthen the patterns, to build more fluency, to increase English thinking in more situations. And that is where the journey becomes even more interesting. Part 3. Training my brain to think in English in real life. After the first weeks of my daily system, something inside me began to unlock. Small English thoughts appeared during the day, short phrases, simple reactions, tiny moments where English arrived before my native language. These moments were small, but they were powerful. They showed me that my brain was changing. They showed me that the system was working. They showed me that thinking in English was possible. But now, I needed the next step. I needed to push beyond controlled practice. I needed to train my brain in real life, not only during study time, not only during shadowing, not only during journaling. Real-life thinking requires a different kind of training. It requires flexibility. It requires speed. It requires courage. It requires confidence. It requires the ability to switch languages instantly without fear. So I made a new rule for myself. A simple rule, a hard rule. A rule that would change everything. Whenever possible, think in English first. That rule became my challenge. That rule became my daily test. That rule became my new mindset. At first, I used it only in small situations. Very small. Tiny situations that felt safe. Tiny moments where the pressure was low. For example, when I woke up, I asked myself one simple question. How did I sleep? I answered in English. I slept well. Or, I feel tired. Simple, easy, quick. When I brushed my teeth, I described the actions. I'm brushing my teeth. I need more toothpaste. I am almost done. When I made breakfast, I continued the habit. I'm boiling water. I'm making tea. I'm frying eggs. I need salt. I should clean this pan. These sentences were not impressive. They were not advanced. They were not complicated. But they were training my brain, training it to switch languages quickly, training it to think in English automatically, training it to use English in daily moments. I knew the power of this habit. Every small English thought was a brick in the foundation of fluency, a brick in the structure of my new language brain, a brick in the transformation I was building. The next step was describing what I saw. This practice changed the journey. It opened my mind. It sharpened my focus. It forced my brain to create English sentences again and again. Whenever I walked outside, I described the world around me. The sky is bright today. I see a tall building. The traffic is loud. A man is walking his dog. The wind feels nice. That store looks busy. I did this for many days, then many weeks, then many months, and slowly describing the world in English became natural. My thoughts began to move faster. My brain stopped reaching for translations. My mind produced English automatically. Then I added another practice, a practice that felt strange at first, but it became one of the most effective habits in my journey. I started asking myself questions in English, then answering them in English. What should I eat for lunch? Maybe noodles. What time is the meeting? It starts at 2. Should I go for a walk now? Yes, I need fresh air. What do I need to finish today? I need to write emails and solve that problem. These conversations with myself might look simple, but they were powerful. They trained both sides of my brain, the question side, the answer side, the reacting side, the deciding side, the thinking side. Thinking in English requires internal conversation, and internal conversation must be trained. You cannot wait for English conversations with other people. You must create the conversations yourself, inside your mind, every day. Soon, something surprising started happening. When I faced a problem, my first reaction came in English. My mind produced English faster than my native language. This shocked me. I never expected this, but it happened naturally because I trained it daily. The next phase of my journey was imagination. Imagination is one of the strongest tools for language learning. When you imagine situations in English, your brain believes they are real. Your brain learns as if you are living in an English environment. So I created imaginary scenarios. I imagined myself in a cafe ordering food. I imagined myself in an airport asking for help. I imagined myself giving directions. I imagined myself talking to a friend. I imagined myself answering questions in an interview. I imagined myself telling a story. I imagined myself explaining a problem at work. I spoke the sentences out loud when possible. I whispered them when I needed to be quiet. I thought them silently when I was in public, but I practiced every day. Imagination made my brain flexible. It prepared me for real conversations. It made me feel confident. It made me feel ready. It made me feel strong. The next challenge was emotional thinking. Emotional thinking is deeper, more powerful, more personal, more transformative. I began describing my feelings in English. I feel nervous today. I feel excited about this project. I feel confused about this decision. I feel proud of my progress. I feel tired from working too hard. I feel happy when I learned something new. I feel stressed because of this situation. When you describe your feelings in English, something changes inside you. English stops being an academic subject. It becomes a living language. It becomes a tool for expressing your inner world. It becomes part of your identity. I realized something important. Fluency is emotional. Thinking in English is emotional. You cannot think deeply in a language if you do not express your emotions in it. That is why this part of the journey was so important. Now I was using English in physical actions, in daily tasks, in observations, in decisions, in internal conversations, in imagination, in emotions. My brain was surrounded by English. English was becoming my automatic reaction. English was becoming my thinking tool. English was becoming natural. But there was still one more step, a very big step, a step that brought me fear at first, a step that required courage, a step that changed everything. I had to use English in real conversations with real people. This idea scared me. I worried about mistakes. I worried about sounding strange. I worried about being slow. I worried about losing words. I worried about being judged. But I knew I had to do it. Thinking in English does not become complete without speaking to real people. Real conversation is the final test, the final challenge, the final stage of transformation. So I made another rule. One conversation every week. Just one. A short one. A simple one. A safe one. The first one happened online. A short chat with a language partner. I felt nervous. My hands were shaking. My voice felt thin. My heart beat fast. But I started speaking. And once I started, I did not stop. The conversation was not perfect. I made mistakes. I paused. I searched for words. But I spoke. I communicated. I shared ideas. I listened. I reacted. And something beautiful happened. My brain stayed in English. I did not translate. I did not freeze. I did not panic. I stayed present. I stayed focused. I stayed in the language. It was working. My training was working. All the daily routines, all the small sentences, all the internal conversations, all the shadowing sessions, all the journaling, all the describing, all the imagining, they were building something real, something powerful, something visible. After that first conversation, I felt brave. I felt stronger. I felt motivated. So I had another conversation the next week, then another, and another. Each one felt easier. Each one felt more natural. Each one felt smoother. Thinking in English was no longer something I had to force. It began to happen automatically. It appeared in daily life. It appeared in decisions. It appeared in conversations. It appeared in my inner voice. My brain was transforming. My identity was shifting. English was becoming part of me. And the most exciting part was still ahead. The moment when English thinking became not just a skill, but a habit, a natural habit, a deep habit, a permanent habit. That is the story of the next chapter. Part 4, when English finally became my second mind. The last months of my journey were different, quieter, deeper, more internal, more natural. In the beginning, I had to push myself to think in English. I had to remind myself. I had to use tricks. I had to follow rules. I had to stay disciplined. But now something new was happening. My brain was changing on its own. My mind began choosing English naturally, not because I forced it, but because it felt easy, because it felt normal, because it felt like a second mind inside me. This was the moment I had dreamed about, the moment when English stopped feeling like a subject, stopped feeling like homework, stopped feeling like a challenge. It began to feel like a place, a mental space, a world where I could live, think, feel, and grow. This transformation did not happen in one day. It happened slowly, quietly, softly, like the sun rising. You do not notice the exact second when darkness becomes light, but suddenly the world is bright. That is how English entered my everyday life. I first noticed it while reading. I was reading a simple article online. Halfway through, I realized something surprising. I had not translated a single sentence. Not one, not even a word. The text felt direct, the ideas felt clear, the meaning traveled straight into my mind. English went in, understanding came out. Nothing in between. This was a new feeling, a strong feeling, a calm feeling, a sign that my brain had crossed an invisible line. Later, it happened during conversations with myself. My internal voice began using English as the default language. Not always, not fully, but often. When I made decisions, I used English. When I planned my day, I used English. When I imagined future goals, I used English. When I corrected myself, I used English. When I spoke silently in my mind, English came first. This was the true beginning of fluency. Not perfect speaking, not perfect grammar, but internal fluency, mental fluency, the ability to think in English before speaking it. During these months, my daily system became lighter, more flexible, more natural. I still followed the 4 parts: morning input, midday activation, evening output, night reflection. But I no longer needed strict rules. The habits were already inside me. They were part of my identity. I kept doing morning input because I enjoyed it. Listening felt relaxing. It felt like a warm-up.
It felt like watering a plant I had grown for months. English audio felt clearer. Voices felt familiar. Words felt friendly. I understood more. I understood faster. And I felt proud every morning. Midday activation also felt different. Shadowing became smooth. My mouth moved with confidence. My speed improved. My pronunciation sounded natural. I could follow faster speakers. I could keep up with conversations. I could copy rhythm easily. Shadowing was no longer a scary activity. It became a joy, a practice that felt like music, a practice that shaped my English voice. Evening output became deeper. My journal was no longer a list of simple sentences. It became a space where I explored ideas, where I reflected on thoughts, where I expressed emotions, where I organized my mind. I wrote about my goals, my hopes, my mistakes, my lessons, my progress, my fears, my excitement. Writing in English no longer felt like a task. It felt like therapy. It felt like clarity. It felt like talking to myself in a new language that understood me. Night reflection became short but meaningful. I asked myself simple questions before sleeping. The answers came in English without effort. My brain processed the day in English. It strengthened the connections. It deepened the fluency. It prepared me for the next morning. But the most powerful changes happened in real life, in unexpected moments. Moments when I did not plan to think in English. Moments when English appeared without invitation. One day, I was cooking dinner. I looked at the ingredients and thought, I need more garlic. So simple, but so important, because my brain chose English instantly. Another day, I lost my keys. I searched around the house saying, where did I put them? Again, in English, fast, natural, automatic. Another time, someone asked me a question in my native language. Before I answered, a full English sentence formed in my mind. I had to translate it back into my native language. This shocked me. I laughed. I felt proud. I realized the shift was real. I was living between two languages, two minds, two ways of thinking, and English was no longer the weaker one. The most emotional moment came during a real conversation, a long conversation. I talked to my friend in English for more than an hour. We discussed life, dreams, career, challenges, future plans.
During that conversation, I did not translate, not once. I listened naturally. I responded quickly. I reacted in real time. I understood jokes, I expressed feelings, I explained ideas. I felt like myself, but in English. When the conversation ended, I sat in silence for a few minutes. I felt a warm energy inside me, a deep satisfaction, a quiet happiness. I realized I had crossed a border. I had entered a new world. This was the moment I understood something important. Thinking in English is not about speed, not about vocabulary, not about grammar. It is about comfort. It is about presence. It is about identity. It is about trust. Trust in yourself. Trust in the language. Trust in the process. I had trained my brain for months, every day, with simple steps, with discipline, with consistency, with patience. And now the results were alive inside me. Not on paper, not in a textbook, not in a vocabulary list, but inside my thinking, inside my reactions,
inside my daily life. English became my second mind, a mind I could enter anytime, a mind I could use to understand the world, a mind that allowed me to communicate, create, and grow. Looking back, I understand something clearly. The journey was not about talent, not about being special, not about natural ability. It was about building a system. It was about trusting small steps. It was about thinking in English every day. It was about showing up again and again. If I could do it, you can do it too. Your brain can change. Your routines can change. Your habits can change. Your identity can grow. Your English can become natural. Your thoughts can become bilingual. Your mind can become bigger than you ever imagined. Thinking in English is not the end of the journey. It is the beginning of a new version of you, a more open you, a more confident you, a more capable you, a more global you. And the most powerful truth is simple. You do not need to move abroad. You do not need expensive courses. You do not need perfect conditions. You only need consistency, a system, daily contact, daily output, daily thinking. English becomes a habit, then a mindset, then a second mind. This is how I trained my brain to think in English in 6 months. This is how my journey changed me. This is how your journey can begin. And now the next chapter belongs to you.
If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to Self-Study Every Day for more helpful lessons. Leave a comment and tell me what you want to learn next.